I'm going to show you how to set up a DC reel. A DC reel is made by Shimano. It's either the Scorpion, the DC 150. They're pretty common nowadays, and really DC stands for digitally controlled. But I wanted to show you how to set this up because a lot of people, I think, might have the wrong expectations about this reel. A lot of things you'll see people doing online is they'll throw these reels and they won't use any braking, and the spool will be perfectly clean, and they'll say, oh, it's a miracle, it's amazing. Well, newsflash, you can kind of do that with any reel if you lock it down hard enough. So let me just show you how to set up the DC. So if you're the kind of a newbie and you're just getting one of these, or if you're new to fishing with a bait caster, these are great ones to learn on. They're a little expensive, but they're good ones to learn on because they can save you a lot of hassle up front. And really the point of the DC reel is to keep you from having backlashes. A backlash, let me see if I can do one without blowing my reel up, is like, a backlash would be something like this. When you cast and you forget to put your thumb on it to stop it, and it bunches up and it just gets mangled up. This one's not bad, but you can get into backlashes that are really bad and hard to get out. And they can be very frustrating when you're on the water trying to fish and get these backlashes out. So I'm going to clean this up, and then I'm going to show you guys how to set this reel up for the best success. The first thing you're going to do is when you pull this thing out of the box, you're going to want to put your line on this reel. And there's plenty of videos on how to put line on a bait caster, so I'm not going to really go over that. That's not the point of my video. But one thing you might find is when you get this on your reel, you might find a few things that aren't quite how you want them, right? First of all, you might find that your drag is really loose. So you increase the star drag, you know, until you feel comfortable that you have the right amount of tension on that reel that's not going to break the line. That's the first thing. The other thing you're going to do is you're going to come over here and you're going to set your settings all the way to 4. I'm assuming you're a beginner. Now on my reel, you can see an A automatic. This is a DC Scorpion. This has a couple more features that others do not, but it's not a big deal. It's the same thing. You're going to set your reel to 4, assuming you have like a DC 150. Now, the other thing you're going to do is, if you hear that little rackety clackety back and forth, that reel or that spool is not properly tensioned within the body of this reel. So this tensioner is going to need to be tightened. The tensioner controls the rate in which the line leaves the reel. Like if you think of a cast as an arc, the beginning of your cast is the rise, it goes to the peak, and then it comes down on the other side when it lands in the water. It's kind of like it actually looks when you cast it, like an arc. Or you throw the lure goes out, kind of raises up to a point, hits a certain amount of momentum, and then hits an apex, and then comes back down and hits the water. The tensioner controls the rate in which your lure leaves the reel and how much resistance that it has in doing so. So if you look at my drop, when I click my lever and let go, my bait just slams to the ground really fast, right? That's no resistance whatsoever. That's going to cause me problems casting, especially if you're new. So the tensioner, we want to make that side-to-side motion stop, or that noise stop. And you can do it little by little, right? Tighten it, still hear it. Tighten a little more, still hear it. Tighten a little more, still hear it. A little more. Okay, a little more. Starting to get better. Less, very little. Okay, right now I have no side-to-side motion in my spool, which is how you should be set when you use this reel normally. But I'm going to assume you're brand new, right? And this, if you watch the rate of my fall of my lure, it's still falling pretty fast, right? You want to get that spool side-to-side motion out. You could even loosen it and find that very fine, perfect point. And that's what's going to optimize those brakes to work the best. And that's for distance casting and things like that. So on the other side, you might say, well, why did you have me go to 4? The 1, 2, 3, 4 doesn't really mean anything. They might have in the book, like, this is for braid, this is for mono, this is for whatever. It really doesn't mean that much to me, other than on the braking side, when your lure is coming to a stop, there is more brakes applied on setting 4 than there is on setting 3, and there's less brakes on 2, and there's hardly any brakes on 1. I fish usually on a 2 with the side-to-side motion gone. You want to start at 4 because you've never casted before. And here's the thing I'm going to tell you right now. That side-to-side motion that we got out, once you get it to where it's not making any noise anymore, I want you to tighten that a little more. Keep going. And I want you to tighten it to where you noticeably can tell your bait is falling slower than it was before. Mine's still going pretty fast. Okay, it's starting to slow down, all right? And I want to tighten it, clamp it down pretty good. And here's why, because I don't want you to have a backlash your first time out. Nothing worse than going out with your brand new $150 reel and having a horrible time, all right? And I'm going to show you how when you cast this reel, this thing will not backlash with this setting. Okay, so I have a decently fast drop. It's not going to kill your casting. Now here we go. Ready? Watch my reel. Look at that. Not any line whatsoever. And I casted about 30 feet. Wasn't a terrible cast. Now, what I want you to practice when you're casting this reel is the timing between your eyes seeing the lure hit the water, and I want you to estimate that timing and start applying a little bit of thumb drag, not a lot, just touch the spool barely, because right now you're not gonna backlash, but I don't want you to become accustomed to casting this reel and not putting your thumb on the reel. I want you to start practicing when that bait is about to hit the water. I want you to start just feathering in your thumb touch to the spool, and you will start to get that timing. And that's what bait casting is all about, it's timing. So let's do a free no thumb one more time. Okay? No backlash, just a little loop there. Perfect. So you're not going to get in a lot of trouble. Now, these aren't bomb casts. I'm not throwing it hard, but I'm throwing it 30, 40 feet. So it's still pretty impressive that it can do that. So I'm going to throw one pretty hard now. Still no backlash, okay? Really, really cool. But you're going to, over time, become a little frustrated that you can't get the distance you want. And you're going to wonder, like, why do I have this expensive reel and can't get the distance? Well, here's the deal. When you get better, the first thing you're going to do is come down and you're going to click it to number 3. And this is when you're starting to use your thumb on the cast. I don't know if you can see this, but watch me. Little bit of thumb right there. Okay, now I'm going like 45 feet. So here I'm on 3. I cast a little bit farther. Watch my thumb again. Lure's up, starting down, I'm thumbing, and I stop it. When you get good enough with your thumb, you really don't even need a DC reel to cast. Now, what they will help you with, though, is even a good bait casting person casting straight into a wind with a light lure will backlash often. So what we're going to do next before we go to 2 is we're going to start coming off of that side to side. So we're going to loosen it up until we get the noise. And this is after you've gotten better. And then we're going to tighten back down. Side to side's gone. Drop is fast. Now you're going to use your thumb and cast on 3 for probably a couple months, depending on how much you fish. A little bit of drag there, and you can hear my thumb. I'll do it one more time so you can hear my thumb dragging on this lure. And that was about 60 feet. And now watch how I use my thumb. Lure's up, coming down, thumb. Okay, let's do that one more time. I don't know if I was in frame. Let's do it one more time. Casting, lure's up, thumb. Okay, and I'm getting a 40, 50 footer on each cast. I'm barely throwing it. And let me reel it in and show you where I like to fish it once I have everything dialed in. I turn it down to 2. I get rid of the side-to-side motion, just barely. That's the least bit of friction you have. And now, there's a 75 footer. I can throw almost all the line off that spool. This thing will cast a mile. And that's where you want to get to. You want to get to where you can set it on setting 2, reduce the spool tensioner to where there's no side-to-side play, but just one turn past, or not even a whole turn, like a little micro turn past. And you want to get to where you're using your thumb all the time, because that's going to set you up for success on other reels too. You don't want to get dependent on this braking system to the point where you never use your thumb, because you're not going to have long casts and you're going to screw up one day when you grab somebody else's reel and you're just going to bum you out. And the other thing, the one big tip I'll tell a new bait caster, the biggest tip of all, do not take the rod tip straight over your head and throw it as hard as you can in any direction, because you will blow that reel up and have a mess on your hands, because it just isn't a good way to start out. I can throw it that way. Even as I fish a lot, I don't throw it that way, but it's not a good idea to start out that way, because you're going to blow up that reel and have yourself a bird's nest from hell, and it's going to piss you off. Do a side cast, a roll cast. A roll cast is when you when you kind of catch the momentum of the rod tip, you like roll it, and then you're kind of going like, think of it like a sidearm, like a pitcher in baseball. It's kind of like that. You hold your arm out, you roll the tip, and you kind of let it go, and you'll learn the release point to get that thing to go perfectly straight. So watch my roll cast as I go down this bank. I think you can see it. And it hits perfectly parallel to the bank how I want it to. And you want to get to the point, and you want to practice placing the cast rather than worrying about how far you're throwing it, because far more important than distance is placement. You want to have this thing go where you want it to. The other good thing about roll casting is you've got your lure down and out of the wind, and you're not going to have issues with like the wind blowing your lure around, blowing it off track, blowing it back at you, causing bird's nests. There's all reasons to have a good roll cast. So just take it slow, learn how to do a good roll cast, good sidearm cast. You can do overhead once you get better, but it can be tricky. You want to be careful, and you want to make sure you're using your thumb at the right time. And I'll walk you back through this one more time. We're going to do a real big crash course. You're going to get the side-to-side motion out, and you're going to tighten the tensioner down more than you need, and you're going to slow the drop of that lure, and then you're going to turn your brakes all the way to 4. Once you have the drop the way you want it, and you've got it on 4, you're safe for light cast. You're not going to go crazy. You're not going to blow up your reel this way, which is good. But that's how you want to set it up first. That's going to be your first phase of casting. You're going to do that for 3 or 4 fishing trips until you've really got it down. And you want to make sure that you're starting to time when the lure hits the water, and you want to apply a little bit of thumb drag just before the lure hits the water, and get used to that timing. The next thing you're going to do before you even touch that tensioner and loosen that up, you're going to go to 3. Once you go to 3, you're going to get a little more distance, and you got to depend on that thumb drag a little bit more. So you're going to want to hit that thumb drag more when you're on 3 than you were, but you're still not going to blow the reel up with a cast, because you've got that tensioner set kind of tight. So here's a 3. See how it kind of blew up a little bit more, kind of had a little bit more spin off, but it's still not killing you. And this is going to teach you to use your thumb. Then the next step, leave it on 3, your next phase of casting. You're going to loosen it till you hear the noise, and you're going to barely tighten it down till that noise goes away. Now you're going to notice the distance is coming. When you get good at casting, loosen it up to 2 and let her burn, man. And the 2 initial tips I want to give to early bait casters: the first tip is sidearm cast whenever possible. Don't overhead cast, and don't cast too hard. The second tip is to use a bait that's heavy enough to cast. This is a 3/8 ounce chatterbait, and it casts like a bullet. You don't want to go much lighter than this when you're initially learning, because it will throw you off. So a Whopper Plopper 90, a chatterbait, a spinnerbait, a Texas rig worm, any of those will work fine. Something that doesn't have a lot of appendages that will get caught up in the air is also a good idea. You want to cast more like a bullet. But don't go grab some kind of lightweight popper or something that's going to just frustrate you, because lightweight lures can be difficult to cast on a bait caster initially. That's how I set it up. Remember, it's not how far you cast, it's where you can put your casts, because placement is far more important than distance. But that's my 2 cents on setting up a DC. I hope that helps you guys, and I hope you guys can get out on the water and do some fishing during this quarantine. And I'll talk to you guys soon.